Good evening, friends. Welcome to one more episode of JHS Excellencia Learning and Development Series. We are fortunate to have with us a very celebrated chartered accountant, a well-known personality, Deepjee Singhal. And he actually doesn't need any introduction. He's a stalwart in the field of risk management and internal audit. And as is evident from his profile, and I will formally read out his profile and introduce. And before I do that, let me welcome Deepjee. He's already with us. Deepjee, welcome to our session on JHS Excellencia, where we invite industry leaders like yourselves to share their learnings, good practices, their words of wisdom with the young team of JHS. We have a combination of our team members joining from 8 offices across the country, as well as quite a lot of clients, friends, independent directors, board members, CFOs. So this is, all the JHS ecosystem that is joining in today for your session. We already have 50 plus participants, and we are expecting about 100 to join in today. So we are really grateful that you made it today for this session. And
Thank you
then
very
for
much, Josefa.
and
Thanks a lot for having me today. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Deepji. And I would request everybody to kindly mute themselves so I can introduce Deepji, and then we'll invite him to start the session. Deepji is a very experienced and a senior professional, science graduate from the Mumbai University, majoring in chemistry. He's a chartered accountant, a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, a certified internal auditor from Florida, USA. He is a certified enterprise risk assessor, a trainer on the subject of ERM, and he has undergone training, professional training at the Drucker Institute of Management, Claremont Graduate University, USA, and is also an accredited trainer for Drucker Curriculum on Management Programs. He was the world president, leadership council of Peter Drucker Society for the year 2011. His work profile includes doing number of engagements, several engagements across sectors in the areas of setting up internal control systems, structures, outsourced internal audit services, business consultancy on design, documentation, implementation of systems, procedures. He has introduced risk-based internal audit practices in organizations and has led the process of introduction of risk management practices in organizations. He has been associated with various assignments on internal control reviews using COSO, COBIT, compliance with SOX requirements, professional practice standards of IIA, Florida. He has been a facilitator for workshops using control self-assessment technique. He's recently advising organizations for internal control implementation to satisfy SOX requirements and the listing requirements in the India region. As a speaker, Deepji is, of course, a prolific speaker. He has contributed to virtually all professional forums in India, including ICAI, ICWAI, IIA, ISACA, CII, and Deepji is also one of the, I would say, the four founding professionals in India in introducing the subject of CATs, computer assisted audit techniques. He has brought the IDEA software to India, and he has done some exceptional work around data analytics. He has also contributed to the guidance note of the CA Institute on the subject of computer assisted audit techniques, which is one of his best publications. He's a author of several books, and he's an expert on the subject of governance and risk. And we are indeed privileged to have him here with us, talking on the subject of governance and digitalization. So he's going to share with us his practical experience and his words of wisdom today, and we are indeed going to immensely benefit from that. So after the session is over, and as per our regular protocols, I would request everybody to ask your questions in the chat mode. so that Deepji can read the questions and is able to then respond to each of the questions. And after his 60 minutes of presentation, we will conclude and the question answer session. I would request my colleague partner Ashish Karkhanis from the Mumbai office to give a vote of thanks to Deepji. So once again, welcome Deepji to this session and kindly take the stage now. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Josefa. It's really a privilege to be speaking to this gathering and really happy to speak to all of you because uh, my dear friend Josefa Unwala invited me to speak to all of you, and it is really wonderful, especially the JHS team which is there across the country, because the organization which Josefa and the other senior members, senior partners, and the other members have built up is really commendable. In a short time, they have really built up a good platform, a firm, a professional services firm, which is delivering a lot of good service to uh, clients in India and abroad. So I think really happy to be speaking to all of you. Many of the partners and team members in JHS are dear friends like Josefa Hundwala. So thanks Josefa for that, for having me. Let me just put up my presentation. Can all of you see my screen, please? Hello.
Yes, Deepji, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Only request is to make it on the expanded mode screen. Yeah, full screen. Thank you.
Is it full screen now?
Yes, very much it is.
Okay, thank you, Zefa. Okay, so today in this Excellencia series, the topic which was given to me was governance and digitalization. And this is a topic which is impacting all of us a great deal in the country and abroad, because it's a very simple thought which has to be put across to all of us, which we already know, but it has to be reinforced today, that digitalization leads to better governance, and digitalization is bringing in a massive digital transformation in the country, whether it is at the government level or whether it is at the organization level, and which is impacting the lives of people in the society in a positive way. So, being an optimist, I am saying that digitalization leads to better governance, digital transformation, and brings about a major change in the lives of people. And as professionals, when we look at organizations, or when we look at whether we are delivering a service to the organization or we are working in the organization, rendering a service to the organization, it's we have to understand that this digital transformation is here to stay, and we have to be a part of that change. We have to be part of that element of change which is happening to ensure that better governance happens, because that's the way the organizations will be efficient and effective. So let me just put up some warm-up slides and a slight change to what Josefa said. Uh, I'll put across few thoughts on this topic, along with few cases uh, which I have seen in the last 15, 20 years, last 10 years in the government sector, in the private sector, and then maybe open out to all of you so that some of us can then put their thoughts, questions, and share and have a better interaction on this topic today. So the first is just a few warm-up slides on what is governance. So I think the OECD, it talks about corporate governance is a set of relationships between a company's management, its board, shareholders, and other stakeholders. And it provides a structure through which the objectives of the company are set and the means of attaining those objectives. And then you can monitor the performance which are determined. So that's governance. What is the need for governance? What is the need for good governance? It helps to build an environment of trust, transparency, accountability, uh, brings financial stability, business integrity, supports stronger growth, and makes the society more inclusive. I think that's important. What is digitalization? Now, I've just picked up a definition from Gartner, which says digitalization is the use of digital technologies to change a business model and provide new revenue and value producing opportunity. So I think what is important is it provides new revenue and value producing opportunity, whether it is for the government, whether it is for the organization. It provides new revenue and value producing opportunity. I'm repeating this because this is the core of digitalization, of digital transformation. What is the need for digitalization? Uh, Digitalization transforms organizations at the organization level. It also transforms the functioning of the government at the government level and brings together data across areas to work together more effectively. So what are the benefits? Enhanced data collection, stronger resource management, data-driven customer insights, better customer experience, encourages digital culture and collaboration, increased profits, increased agility, and improved productivity. Now, I think we will delve into some of these areas as we go along, and we'll see how it impacts organization and how it impacts the common person in the society. What is the impact of digitalization on organizations? If we look at the strategic context, it drives the diminishing of entry barriers. It disrupts existing value chains, industry structures, and business models. It opens the market for it creates a high degree, thus leading to a loss of the information monopoly. There are numerous examples which I can go on giving. In today's context, if I'm sitting in an organization and I need to know what is the import cost of a particular raw material from a particular country or from across the world into India, it is possible to look up a digital database or to acquire that information in digital form to understand from which port what material was imported and by whom and at what cost. So what it is doing, it is bringing down the entry barrier. It is changing the ways, it is disrupting the value chains. It is leading to a loss of information monopoly because any common person can access the database across and find out what is the raw material, what cost it is being purchased at, which port it is being imported at, and by whom. So that just one example I gave you. And similarly on the export side, or you take up any example, a freight rate, or you take up a particular process, and you will find that because of digitalization, there's a huge change in the way the industry operates or the structures operate. What is the impact? Again, it's the social networks and media can allow organizations to take advantage of the crowd whose idea and expertise provides answers to problems or to seize new opportunities. I'm just giving an example on online collaboration. The tracking devices enable shifting towards a sensor-based society where digital information is collected without people's preferences, what they do and with whom they interact. I think we are seeing that with all the apps that we have got on our mobile. I think we are constantly being monitored, tracked, and on that basis, I think the organizations are then throwing in products or services towards us to attract, to maximize their particular revenue. What is the impact? Again, disappearance of organizational boundaries, building information sharing alliances with external companies and setting up internal organizational information management and information monetizing projects. Before I get into this, let's look at some examples. I gave you one example of the import data which is being looked at by organizations in terms of the raw material coming in. Let's take a few more examples. Let's take a 5-star property. Earlier, when you walked into a 5-star property, there was a day rate. They used to give you a day rate based on, they used to calculate what is the rooms availability and what would the competitors be offering nearby region. Today, you have a AI based or app which is sitting on the computer, and it is on a real-time basis, it is logging on to sites like Ibibo or other Cleartrip and so on, other consolidation sites, and it is looking at what is your competitors offering around, for other 5-star properties around the region. And a 5-star property in that particular area, the software would suggest to you what should be your rate if a FIT guest walks in, and on that basis, based on the input by the software, the organization can decide, or the revenue manager or the income manager can decide, the front desk can decide what to keep the rate so that they maximize the rate. At the same time, the rooms don't go empty. So, you are trying to optimize the revenue for the property. So just one more example. So like this, there are hundreds of examples around us in in what we find that digitalization or digital transformation is transforming organizations. And I think as a professional services firm or as professionals sitting in organizations, we need to understand what's happening, and we need to prod or be a part of this change, and also push the organizations or work with the organizations to ensure that they also move in this direction to maximize revenue and also maximize their productivity, etc. Before we go to organization, I think we have to sit back and say, who is the biggest stakeholder in all this? Who's the biggest driver in all this? I would say government initiatives, or the government is the largest stakeholder in the country. Organizations are only a element in the entire country. But if you just think back in the morning when we get up, I think the trash is collected by a government agency, right? They may outsource certain functions, but the trash is collected by the government. The major hospital or the health system across the country is run by the government sector. The ports, the defense, the regulatory authorities, anything you think of, the major why the country is moving across the world. Governments are working because there are governments and there are organizations or arms of the government which are working across, whether at a district level, state level, or at the central level, whether in any country in terms of the federal structure or the central structure, where the government is delivering services and products to its citizens. And I think that's where the digitalization has maximum impact for better governance. So if you look at some of the key changes which have happened in the last 10, 15, 20 years, I think the first one of 25 years back was the TDS, maybe 30 years back. And then in the last, the beneficiaries, you have the Bharat broadband network, you have certain common services center, DigiLocker, you have a Digi Yatra which is coming in. When you walk into an airport today, the most important is Bheem, which is a UPI Bharat interface for money, which is now being looked upon by other countries in the world. I think so. We are becoming a digital economy. So we're talking about digital wallets and etc. Paytms, or just scan and you can pay across to a vendor on the street, which is not so in some other countries around the world. You talk about the COVID certification, which is again a major digital transformation in our country, which is looked upon by the other countries in the world, because they still have to produce a paper-based, certificate when you talk about a COVID certificate, whereas we have a digital, we can just show it on a mobile. Just look back on what's happened in terms of the passport, how you get your passport, the digital transformation which has happened there, the registrar of companies, income tax today, we are saying a faceless assessments being done, RTO offices, and so on. Just look at any service which is happening, the custom services, the green channel which is happening there, DPD which happened earlier, and now you have got the green channels where you can directly load on containers to the freight and take it outside the port, so that the freight cost comes down for the consumer, for the company. So there's a whole gamut of changes, whether in the banking, whether at the company level, whether it is in hospitals, whether it is in transportation, whether it is in logistics, where the entire digitalization is taking place and bringing about a major change. Let me give you a few examples on the digitalization in the government sector, which has really made a lot of impact to the common person in the country. Whatever money is collected by the government is collected by the CGA office, Controller of Government Accounts. And again, the planning or the budgets are set by them in consultation with the finance. The finance ministry does that, and they collect all the data from the CGA. And of course, whatever is spent, so there would be 1,300, 1,400 schemes through which the government spends money for the welfare of the citizens, whether it is a fertilizer subsidy, whether it is a healthcare, whether it is reaching out to various schemes for tribals and so on across the country. Few years back, if you just go back 20 years, without digitalization, without the digital transformation, everybody was working blind. You would have a central scheme and you would say a particular beneficiary needs to get a certain money in a certain region, so they would sanction it from the central authority to a state authority, the state authority to a district authority, and then the money would be going out. And you would not know what's the impact, how effective the scheme is. With digitalization, with a digital transformation, the government 20 years back, 15 years back built a FMC, I don't recollect the full name now, but they built a PFMS system or PMS system, something at the central level, at the CGA level, where they could actually monitor what is being spent and what's the impact at the grassroots level. So let me give you an example, which is my favorite example because I saw that happening. And in healthcare, you have got money being paid out to tribal women, pregnant tribal women for iron tablets. I'm just giving one example which is there. And when you pay out that money, sitting at a central level today in the system, you can see regions where you can actually map out how much money is paid out in each region, each district level. And then you can say, what's the mortality rate for infants in that particular region? So then you can map that, have a correlation and say money is well spent or not. So I think that's the kind of impact that digitalization is having across the country. We are having a lot of cases on GST where GST is being where a lot of people being hauled up for wrongly claiming GST or maybe setting up shell companies. Now, how does that happen? Because there's a GST platform and it's very easy to go onto that platform. Initially, when it was launched today, you look at the bugs, what happened, who's claiming input credit, and against that, what's the benefit and how it is flowing. So it's all visible. It's all digitized information. Digitalization is happening, and you can actually run a series of algorithms to find out where the money is being siphoned off or where the leakages are. So it's very easy to reach out to people and say, okay, hey, let's stop and let's make this correct. Let's make it all right. So I'm just giving you another example. So these are few examples at the government level, and these examples which I'm giving at the government level has far-reaching impact on the organizations in the country. Organizations are much smaller compared to the government initiatives which is holding on to the country, and these initiatives by the government leaves a lot of impact on the organization and the service providers. When we work with the government or when we work with organizations, I think we have to understand what's happening in terms of digitalization so that we can prod or we can be a part of this again to push the organizations to embrace digitalization, because not all organizations would be embracing digitalizations in the same fashion as all organizations do. So the more the digitalization, the better governance in organizations and the better chance the organization has to make more revenue, to be more productive, to be more profitable. I've talked about digital transformation benefits in a nutshell, greater innovation, improved customer engagements, increased responsiveness, continued relevancy, increased efficiency and productivity, increased revenue, faster time to market, better resource management. Let me just talk in brass text, rather than all these slides. If we talked about the government, let's talk about organizations. If we go out an organization today, I would talk about mid-sized organizations today, not the very large ones, not the multinationals who already are bringing in technology and best practices from abroad, but Indian organizations. So organizations in India who are from say 100 crores to 2,000 crores or 3,000 crores. That's the space I'm talking about, where we are going as professional service providers. So whether we are rendering an external audit service, whether we are rendering an internal audit service, whether we are rendering a structuring service, whether we are doing a consulting assignment for improving the profitability or bottom line, working on various aspects in the value chain in that organization, from procurement to sales, maybe, and collections, so any particular value chain or any particular element of that process that we are rendering a service, I would say we are part of the digital transformation which has happened, and the organization will have to embrace digitalization. So what is the digital transformation? Let me say, earlier when we used to go in, the organization would have a small ERP, or maybe they would be thinking of going in for a large ERP. Today, I find that even small organizations are embracing either a large ERP, a good ERP, whether it's India built or whether it's the ERPs of the world like SAP, Oracle, or Office 365 central, but they are embracing an ERP. So there's an ERP. There will be certain components of the ERP which are in place, but then you would have a HRMS system, whether you will build it in the ERP or you would have a separate HRMS system. You would have a CRM system. You will have a sales management system, whether it will be Salesforce or Spurs or some other. There will be hundreds of softwares which are available from Zoho and so on. So there will be a sales system which where you can monitor sales if that's key to your success or that's what you require. There would be a compliance management solution. There would be a contract management solution built within your ERP or separately from ERP with linkages, with APIs being built so that it can talk to your ERP. Then you would have a lot of other systems, a company secretarial system which is there so that you can have meetings which are online, board meetings which are online, and you can record all the meetings and the minutes are sent out online. The directors can attend it, through their tabs or through their computers and so on. So what I'm talking about is there's a whole lot of efforts or digitalization transformation which is required by organizations. So when we are rendering, even today when we conduct an external audit or an internal audit, you would collect data and you will directly latch onto the client systems either in the production mode, or if the client says no, it's a bank, you may go to a development server and get log on to it, and maybe they would make a sandbox for you where you can log on and then get in data. So whether you're performing a service, it is in a digital form. You're using digital tools, techniques to work. Whether you're rendering a consulting service, you need to work with your clients to ensure that the boards appreciate and the clients appreciate that they have to embrace digital transformation. So I think slowly you'll find technology is enabling a lot of systems and processes, and most of them are getting digitized. Digital systems, you have lesser manpower, you have more analytics, you have more analysis coming out. So better the organization in terms of digital transformation, the better the chance that the organization would perform better, maximize revenue, have higher profitability, higher productivity, etc. And I think in that professional needs to work in that direction. This is just 2020. I would say it is outdated, but this slide says 58% of the directors and 82% of the executives say the board is informed enough to support the company's digital efforts. There's a PwC survey which I just picked up from the net. Is your workforce ready for a digital future? 40% of the directors polled and 71% of the senior management executive polled say the workforce is digitally savvy. 58% of directors polled and 73% of the senior management executives polled say the workforce is engaged in the digital transformation process. My personal call on this or take on this, even the labor workforce is embracing digital technologies like anything. So, it's easier to get implementation done on a digital transformation project or on a digital technology which is being implemented, whether it is a plant management software or whether it is within SAP or outside of SAP. The workers would be the first one to embrace it very easily compared to convincing the top management. So I think this is a poll for the top management, but they are also embracing it quite fast because there's no other option. Now, what are the barriers to upskilling? Top two choices for each group. I think the 34% of the directors polled, they cited changing leadership mindset and standard processes, or lack of time. That's another thing which came up, and of course, focus on training. Training, I think, is continuous training for upskilling to ensure digital transformation is a must. Now, what are the key considerations for boards on digital enablement? Get smarter about the current technologies in place and new technologies on the horizon. So I think we all need to, I think firms like JHS have already done that, and a lot of other firms in the country and a lot of service providers where you need to build your own digital library or knowledge database where you can advise clients on what are the current technologies in place and new technologies which are on the horizon, whether it is, as I talked about earlier, whether it is the HRMS system or whether it is, uh, a sales enablement system or a CRM or a sales management system or a compliance management solution or uh, and so on. So there are number of technologies either which will be built within your existing ERP, or you may have other technology being built. Like I talked about a 5-star property, they may build a particular ERP, they may use a particular ERP which is available. At the same time, they may take another software which is a plugin which will look at calculating maybe the day rate, by looking on a real-time basis at the consolidation online for the nearby hotels through a consolidators, and so on. So give you inputs where you can work on maximize your revenue. So company has to ensure that this is all done. Let me give an example. Earlier, for a liquor company, let's take liquor in Maharashtra or for that matter other states, they used to get what is the liquor sold from your factory to the government warehouses and from government warehouses to the shops, and that data would be then be available because the companies would have to then organizations would have to then upload it on the excise portal or report it to the excise authorities, and it would be a monthly database. So then on a monthly basis you would get a CD or you will get a data from the government which said this is what are the sales for the state and this is what has happened, and you will upload it on your ERP if you are enabled, and then look at what's competition and what's happening. Now today that happens. The government has enabled a portal where the data flows from your factory or from the warehouses on an online basis. The moment it is done, it is uploaded onto a website, and that portal data is available to you. So if you integrate that portal data with your ERP, you would be knowing what's the sale on a daily basis and what's the sale for competition also on a daily basis. So I think I'm just talking about what is the current technology, new technology, and we need to get smart about it. Task working groups or committees with identifying the risk and rewards of applying these new technologies to board operations. Be clear. I think this is the most important thing, is be clear on what problems you are trying to solve. Avoid the temptation to implement shiny new object technologies that may not be most effective for the problem at hand. Uh, let's not go overboard in applying this. I think what is important is what do we want to achieve, what is the objective, and whether it will get done, and what is the right technology for it. So work with management to define the boundary between oversight and decision making amid the implementation of new technologies. This is for the boards, proper training mechanisms, and of course, dialogue with the process owners. Uh, Now, if I go a step down, I talked about the government, we talked about the organizations. Let's talk about there's data analytics, continuous control monitoring, RPA, AI, and blockchain, which is assisting all these technologies which are uh, bringing in digital transformation. So data analytics is the science of analyzing raw data to make conclusions about that information, and continuous control monitoring is set of technologies to reduce business losses through continuous monitoring of financial and other transactional applications. I think this has already been adopted in a big way by banks, insurance companies, and other organizations are slowly adopting this in a big way. RPA is the robotic process automation is a software technology that makes it easy to build, deploy, and manage software robots that emulate human actions interacting with digital systems and softwares. Number of examples I can talk about is daily bank repo, which is happening between bank and the system. By you, if a huge number of banks are available, if number of banks are being employed by a particular organization, then you may use RPA to do that, or you may use bots to ensure that you have a daily or maybe a reconciliation going on in the morning or evening. Uh, the same bots, because the time is available, you may want to optimize the time because you spend money on the bots. You may want to use RPA to even automate other processes in accounts, so or any other function. So just let me give you one example of accounts where a particular organization implemented an RPA, and they had an SAP software. uh, they were having 200 300 inwards happening daily at different factory locations, and the bills used to come, they got piled up. There was a set of 4 or 5 people at head office who would then clear the bills. So you would have a GRN, then you clear the bills, and then it'll get posted to the ledger, creditors ledger, payables, and then of course, the payments would happen later on through the bank. Now, how did they employ particular bots or RPAs? And they did some configuration in the software itself. Was that you have a SAP system, you collect the material comes in the GRN at the factory, so you do a MIGO there, and then it's called a MIGO when you receive the material at the factory, the GRNs, and then you transfer it. You just scan the invoices which are coming, and since your indents, purchase orders, the GRN forms the basis for a person clearing your bills. The scanned bills were automatically looked at by these bots, by this RPA system which was set, and the process was automated. So what will happen was that they would read and they would post it to the creditors ledger automatically. So I think it's at night, this would happen at the night. So what is happening is that during the day you have all these things happening, at night the bills get processed. So this cell was then made into just a one-person cell, because then you could have 3 people doing some other tasks, some other analytical work which was required by the organization, and only those particular invoices where there was an error would get flagged off for a person to look at it next day morning and work on that. One more, I think 2-3 more examples I've talked about later, so we'll look at that. Artificial intelligence, I'm not going to talk about it because all of us are aware how it's changed the landscape, how we work, how we look at data, blockchain, etc. So just one example, I've taken from start to end, whatever process you have. Let me also show this to you because we are a very enlightened group. So let's look at this. You have data capture, collect and synthesize your data. You have data enrichment in terms of modify, rationalize, normalize your data, what you require. Data validation, validate, authenticate your data. Process, perform the process action, reconcile, analyze and report. And all this can be done automatically. The example which I gave you earlier again was can flow through this. If you're doing an internal audit, we can flow through this particular process again. So you have robotic process automation, you have real-time analytics, you have artificial intelligence, all working together to ensure that all this is happening. And now this is possible for very small organizations who can actually do this kind of work. One other example, we can just keep thinking about our clients or customers where we work, and we'll come up with numerous examples where this is happening. Let's look at a project work where a particular road is getting built or something is happening, and you will find that the measurements happen on a daily basis. And earlier those measurement sheets would come to the head office. They would have manually being fed into the system. Then they would look at how do you do a project billing, and this would be a big mess because this would be done manually. Now I think through a tab or through your smartphones, people are putting in the measurements directly at the site. They can be reconciled automatically by what's happening. You can take pictures and send it across, and sitting at head office you have the days. At the end of the day you actually know what got built, how much it got built, and then on a fortnightly basis or on a particular date, say 20th of every month, you can actually do the billing by looking at what's happening. Again, you can look at what is the major materials which are sent out, what was being consumed, does it tally with which is the square meter being built, and then again look at the measurements and say what are the yields for a particular day for each site. Now earlier this was all a manual process, now it's all an automated process, of course with some brains working to ensure that all this works properly. So again we can go through all this. One more example, since I think Josefa ji was very kind enough to introduce me as a internal auditor. So I'm an internal auditor at heart, So earlier the teams used to go out and they would look at, let's take a procurement audit, and you would go out to a particular client place and then ask for data, log into the systems, get data, download files, ask the IT, ask the procurement teams, look at the reports, try to work out what's happening today in today's scenario. As we face more and more problems on manpower, as we want to become more smarter, I think what's happening is you have a set of 60, 70, 80 objectives to be performed, and you find that 80% of those objectives may be done through digital use of your computers, and you do a walkthrough, or you may need to actually go physically and do the audit. So you call for data, you call for the purchase registers, you call for the consumption reports, you call for the stores inventory reports, you call for the bill payment process reports and so on, or you directly go into the system, log on, collect all the data, you run it through your algorithms or the tests that you have built in those 60, 70, 80 tests if you want to run on that data. You're not talking about sampling, you're talking about 100% data being audited, and you can actually result in whatever the deviations you get, that you can actually go in the field with the people and sit down with them and just try to solve that. So I think from a 3 week or 4 week, you can come down to 1 week and do that audit, and still it will be a smart audit. Just one other example in terms of auditing, but the same thing is happening at the financial controller level, at a CFO level, at a CEO level within an organization. And I'm saying this is happening more so at the government level. The government is much smarter than the organization today. They are whole lot of digital transformation which has already happened and which is happening as we speak. This is the same thing. I've just put it in the form of a flat diagram, so I'll skip through this. Just two or three, I'll just touch upon 2 or 3 case studies, not much, because I think it will be better if we discuss, or if we have some of us give their thoughts, which will be much better. So I think global major, talking about, looking at an oversight in terms of the revenue management and stock return metrics, order to cash cycle, because there are 1,000 plus dealers and stockist networks in the Indian market. So you build algorithms and you do data analytics, and you can look at your sales. Near expiry goods are shipped out in time so that they don't expire. And also when your returns happen, they should happen at the value at which they are shipped out. It should not happen that you give credit notes at a higher value because maybe later on the prices were revised. So the distributors are returning back items which they are taken earlier from the earlier batches, and then trying to take in money at a higher value in terms of credit notes, because you feel the present price is different. So I think if you run algorithms, there was a lot of savings which happened there. In workers or contractor payments, again, you run analytics and you can look at the performance. You can look at whether they were overpaid, whether they were paid properly or not, and what mistakes happened there. Point of sale, again, you can build in a number of tests at point of sales. People in retail industry already have a loss prevention section. They are using a huge continuous monitoring tools. They're using digital technologies. The auditors who are coming in are using digital technologies. They're using continuous monitoring tools to ensure that everything runs properly and the loss is minimized as much as possible. These are some of the items which we talk about in detail analytics. A very enlightened group I've got here, so I think you can talk about more. This is just example which are talking about isolate duplicate return transactions. Look for check purchases and refunds within 15 days. First credit card purchases and refunds to different credit cards. The same day you find credit card purchases and then refunds to different credit cards. So whole lot of algorithms which you can build in return analytics, which are already being done by a number of organizations in terms of cash disbursements, loss prevention, purchase order management, and whatever additional tests you want in terms of patterns and what's happening at the retail level. Then you are talking about I'll skip through some of these case studies because I said 30 to 45 minutes and my 45 minutes are already up. So you have hotel properties. Earlier there was a concept of night auditor. In hotel properties there is a concept of night auditor. They would physically sit with documents in the night, in the evening, and they would go through the day's transactions, because a hotel is like a bank. You have a customer checking out, he's gone. So you look at any leakages, you look at their reg card, you look at their bills, and you would say, okay, what's going wrong, what's going right, and then the auditor would say everything is tallied, all good. Now most of these hotel properties I know of today are using technology. They are building in scripts. They're building in what the night auditor used to do. They have built in scripts, and they just run those scripts at the night. Only the physicals which are left, maybe done by the people there. For example, the physicals would be, you have a F&B manager going around in the morning, looking at the levels in the alcohol bottles, or how much was sold, and trying to reconcile it with your system, what was sold and what's the levels, in different bottles across the property. So just one example I'm giving. So what I'm saying is that most of the other things are digitized, and people are using digital technologies to look at, monitor that there's no revenue leakage and your revenue is protected. Now, how emerging technologies might impact boards? Why did I pick up this thought? Because Huzefa mentioned that we are having people at the board level. So I think all of us are at the board level. So I just picked out this AI technology. I'll just pick out one or two items from these to talk about. Greater transparency into underlying data such as risk or performance data to support effective management decision making. That's number one. We talked about. I think that's how, because boards are also becoming very demanding, and that's why you need these emerging technologies and need to embrace them and put them into a organization. What's the implications? The complexity and the speed of change in digital and technology can make it difficult for board directors to focus on technology as a crucial strategic priority that can unlock new revenue and competitive advantage. What is important here is that the goal for the board isn't to understand the technology, but rather to understand its implications. And one way to address this would be to bring in new board members whose experience aligns with the business's strategic priorities. How boards can help digital transformation, scale, source, scope. Digital transformation initiatives should have the potential to influence operating profits positively. So I think we discussed here earlier that when you are implementing a new technology, let's look at the cost benefit. Let's look at how it will positively impact the organization. And I, for one, would say that when a person is choosing, when a group of people are choosing a technology for an organization, whatever technology they may choose, what is important is how does the question to be asked is how does it influence my operating profits positively? Does it really influence my operating profits positively? If no, I don't need them. I don't need the technology. Even for NGOs, I think this is the question, because I think Peter Drucker said any NGO has to be self-sustaining. Any NGO has to make profits, because if they don't make profits, they cannot deliver to the society in a better form. A stronger the NGO, the better it can deliver to the society, and that's the objectives for the NGO when it is formed. So you need to, any new technology you need to implement or to take on for the organization, you need to ask the question, does it influence my operating profits positively? The board can make sure in terms of source that management is exploring ways to tap tech to create new values or sources of value. And scope is digital transformations require long-term commitments to reap full rewards they can deliver. So I think they must press their CEOs to make sufficient expenditures for long-term sustainable initiatives. Digital transformation is usually not only buying new technology, but it's a culture change in the organization. So it's a slow process. What happens is you put in any new technology, it takes time to for the people to adjust to the technology, to deliver using the technology. So the full benefit comes in over a period of time. Track whether the digital transformation is working. So facilitate and build a framework to monitor and track return on investment. Keep talking about it every quarter. Keep talking about it every quarter to have a dashboard or just a simple tracker to understand what transformation we discussed, what has happened, and how is that digital transformation working. I'll skip through this and thank you to all of you, and I would now request some of you to give the ideas or thoughts or anything. I'm open to it. I said 45 minutes and I've taken 50 minutes. So I think I've just gone through this because it was a simple thought which I talked about, that there is a digital transformation happening across, and more so at the government level, which you're not understanding. We are only thinking organization.
Right. Thanks. Thank you so much, Deepjee. And we have 3-4 questions for you here. So one is from Shruti Gangan. She's asking you that are there any examples or views on use of digitalization to reduce corruption amongst PSUs?
Any examples or views on use of digitalization to reduce corruption amongst PSUs? I think the main focus of digital transformation itself is to reduce corruption. the main focus. I give you an example about the tribal woman, example, just a small example, but most of the schemes which are administered by the government across in the country, uh, earlier they were blind. With digital transformation, with digitalization, with use of technology, with use of softwares, with better monitoring systems, with continuous monitoring, corruption is coming down. We may talk about it more in the newspapers because it's a huge population, and we are a fifth largest economy in the world. So the economy is going up. So we may feel, there's a lot of corruption. But in actual, if you look at the numbers, it is coming down. Why? Because it's being monitored. Earlier, it was not being monitored. There's the anti-money laundering bill, which is there. There's the Benami Act, which is there. So today, if you look at earlier, people could hold properties without even anybody knowing about it. Today, if somebody is to buy a property, it is digitized property. Then you can actually link it up. Uh, if I'm sitting at a government level or at any particular level and need to know about the person, all I have to do is I have to log into the core banking solution. I have to get data about from the core banking solution. I have to get data from the property records. I can get data from multiple sources, from the credit cards. I can build a whole profile for a person concerned. So I think all this digitization, all this digital transformation is already bringing in a lot of change in the way how things are being looked upon. So I think we will see more of that happen, and slowly people will get adjust in the country, and corruption will certainly come down. I'm an optimist that it will come down. That's how I think we are in a functioning society. We are not a dysfunctional society. Uh, we are not like some other countries which are we are dysfunctional. Being an optimist, I am saying that we are a functioning society. With all the imperfections. Any examples of use of digitalization to reduce corruption? Can you please touch upon the data protection bill and its impact on digitalization going forward? I had read this earlier, but I have not gone through it point wise. But I was just talking to two companies yesterday. As soon as it was passed in the Lok Sabha yesterday, I spoke to two of my companies where I'm doing consulting. I talked to the IT head and I said, let's make a point wise notes on how it will impact the company organization, how it will impact the individuals in the organization in terms of whether I'm collecting data from HR, from the employees, how I'll use that data, whether HR has the right to take that data, or whether I need to get a disclosure from employees, at the time when I'm inducting the employees in the organization, how I'm going to use that data, how my data, when I'm putting it up on the sites outside on my website, how will it impact me, so and so on. So there are a lot of clauses in that. So one will have to go through all of those clauses to see how it will impact, what are the risks for the organization, how you need to take mitigation steps, and how you need to ensure that you implement this, in its entirety, and you're not hit by any regulations by the government. So, already I think GDPR, as we know in Europe, is personal data protection. So again, you find that organizations are already becoming compliant in this country when we're talking about dealing with the European governments or getting data from or working with the companies in Europe or European companies doing business here. So I think similarly with this data protection bill, I think Indian companies would also, we need to embrace this particular technology, and we'll have to have technology corresponding to ensuring privacy for individuals, for organizations, and so on, especially for individuals. There were any other examples, any specific certifications available on the subject? Digitalization depends on what is the type of application one wants to look at. Like if you are in an IT function, I would say ISO 27001 would be relevant for you, for whether you are totally compliant. Different areas would want different certifications may be available, but there's no one particular certification which deals in terms of what is digital transformation, because that's a huge subject, with huge general subject at large. Is there a model? Satish, my dear friend, is saying, Satish Chana is with us today. So he's saying, is there a model to quantify the quantitative and qualitative benefits of digitalization? There is no model available, but yes, in organizations where I'm working in the capacity of being an advisor to the board, you put in a tracker where you say that if I implement a particular technology, then on a quarterly basis, when once it's gone live, what are the benefits to the organization per se? So I think without benefits, private sector organization would not put money behind a particular technology. So I think there's a cost benefit done, and then you actually track it to say what are the benefits coming in. For example, if I talk about a plant maintenance module, for large organizations, you may not implement a plant maintenance module for in SAP. What are the idle hours? Uh, what is the root cause for uh, breakdown maintenance? Is it coming down or is it not coming down? So there's a direct benefit to the organization, direct benefit in terms of digitalization. So I think there are benefits which can be modeled, but there's no one single model which you can adopt and say, okay, this is the model. You can only build dashboards, you can only build trackers to ensure that you keep reviewing them on a monthly or a quarterly basis. I cannot see the slides past 3 minutes. Can you please let us know? South Korea tops on governance index across the world. Are there any examples to learn from South Korea, other developed economies? A lot of examples to learn from across the world, I would say. But I think a lot of examples to be learned by the world from India also. A lot of digital transformation has taken place in India, which is now being looked upon by the world. Uh, Thank you, Deepjee, for taking my question. Thanks, Uday, for the invite. Well organized event. Satish Shenoy. I think anybody would like to share any thoughts or I don't see any other questions, Josefa.
Yeah, Digji, I think it just goes to show that how lucidly and in a very simple way you explained a very complex subject of digitalization and governance both put together, and specifically the conceptual examples that you gave were amazing, and it was indeed a wonderful session. So if there are no more questions from anybody, then we can move on to the vote of thanks. I will request my colleague Ashish Karkhanis to please give a warm vote of thanks to Deepji.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Josefa, and thanks a lot, everyone. Yeah.
Good evening, all of you, respected guests, and all our friends at the JHS family. I think we have had a very immensely informative and assertive session on the governance and digitalization by Mr. Singhal. He has brought out the pervasiveness of the digitalization, which has encompassed the entire economy and our day-to-day working routines also. Probably there are things which we may not have even imagined, like simple BHIM, UPI, which we are doing day-to-day transactions. However, these are also part of the digitalization process. And being a country which is moving towards reduced paper procedures and more transparency in all the areas of governance from the government as well as the organizations, I think we are probably moving towards a more structured and more efficient digitalization process compared to probably many other countries which are also doing the same. I think there are some very fine points that Mr. Singhal has touched upon, like the responsibilities the government has taken in promoting the digitalization across a lot of sectors, across a lot of initiatives. Also, the importance of digitalization for corporates with respect to having their boards taking the onus for implementing digitalization and looking at it from a efficiency perspective as well as a tool for maximizing the operating margins, as he has rightly put it across. Again, digitalization has to be percolated to all the sections of the workforce or the society, as we call it. It is not just a top-down approach, it is pervasive to all the sections of the society. I think which is best displayed by direct benefit transfers, which has been initiated by the government, which goes from directly to government to the last mile, and which gives a greater transparency and a greater efficiency, and obviously minimizes corruption across all levels. I think there are a lot of positives from digitalization, which we all have seen with respect to different tools for accounting, for auditing, which he has talked about, like RPA, artificial intelligence, which everybody is using at all levels in some form or the other. Blockchain technology, which is probably one of the most talked about aspects in today's world with the debate on cryptocurrency which is going on. Also, very nice case studies which he has put up, which reflect how data analytics can actually help organizations put in more efficiency and more result-driven approaches at different levels of the organization and different sectors of the organization is something we can all learn from. Benefits he has already talked about, ranging from innovation to increased revenue, resource management, uh, morely customer engagements, and continued relevancy of the operations. I think, Mr. Singhal, we have all a lot to learn from you, and probably this 1 hour 15 minutes is not enough to cover such a vast topic. I think you have given us a great feedback on the questions we have asked. I would request all the members to carry this vote of thanks with a hearty round of applause for Mr. Deepjee Singhal. Thank you so much.
Deepji, one last request before we sign off, because quite a lot of our participants do write to us for the presentation copy.
I'll
So,
send it across to you in the next 10 minutes.
great. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you once again for joining. It was indeed a privilege and our pleasure to have you. Thanks
Thank
for
you
the
very much.
wonderful session.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Singhal. Thank to all the respected guests and the JHS team. Thank you.